Indian National Congress Manifesto, 2024. At every stage of its 138-year journey, Indian National Congress had identified itself with the problems, development, aspirations, and hopes of all the people of India. During the freedom struggle, its foremost aim was to win freedom. It was guided by the wisdom and sacrifice of great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. After independence, the Congress Article of Faith was the Constitution of India, of which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was the prime architect. The gravest danger is that India may no longer be a truly free and democratic republic. Democracy in India has been hollowed out, and we are rapidly sliding to become a one-party and one-person dictatorship. The federal structure is under attack, with the central government appropriating most of the central revenues, passing laws on subjects that were hitherto left to the state governments, and using its financial and executive powers to reduce states to municipalities. Governors of non-BJP governed states are encouraged to paralyze the working of elected governments. Laws and investigating agencies are used to foist false cases against non-BJP leaders to force them to submit to the BJP's will. The media has been rewarded or intimidated to become a vehicle of propaganda of the government. Ask yourself two questions. 1. Is your life better today than what it was in 2014? 2. Is your mind without fear as dreamed by Rabindranath Tagore? The choice is not Congress or BJP, but it is more than that. The choice is democratic government or authoritarian rule, freedom or fear, prosperity for all or wealth for a few, justice or injustice. The 2024 general election presents an opportunity for radically changing the style and substance of governance that has been in evidence in the past decade of Anyay Kal. We appeal to you to look beyond religion, language and caste, choose wisely, and install a democratic government that will work for all the people of India. We appeal to you to vote for the Indian National Congress. Equity. Social justice. Point 1. Congress will conduct a nationwide socio-economic and caste census to enumerate the castes and subcastes and their socio-economic conditions. Based on the data, we will strengthen the agenda for affirmative action. Point 2. The Congress guarantees that it will pass a constitutional amendment to raise the 50% cap on reservations for SC, Cent and OBC. Point 3. The reservation of 10% in jobs and educational institutions for economically weaker sections will be implemented for all castes and communities without discrimination. Point 4. We will fill all the backlog vacancies in posts reserved for SC, Cent and OBC within a period of 1 year. Point 5. Congress will abolish the contractualization of regular jobs in the government and public sector enterprises and ensure regularization of such appointments. Point 6. We will enhance institutional credit to SC and Cent for home building, starting businesses and purchasing assets. Point 7. Congress will establish an authority to monitor the distribution to the poor of government land and surplus land under the Land Ceiling Acts. Point 8. The scope of the public procurement policy will be expanded to award more public works contracts to contractors belonging to the SC and Cent communities. Point 9. Funds for scholarships for OBC, SC and Cent students will be doubled, especially for higher education, We will aid SC and sent students to study abroad, and will double the number of scholarships for them to pursue a PhD. Point 10. Congress will establish a network of residential schools for the poor, especially SC and SENT students, and extend them to every block. Point 11. We will include in the curriculum of schools the life skills and work of social reformers to spread the message of social justice. Point 12. We will establish Ambedkar Bhavanskam libraries in every district to promote the habit of reading and discussion. Point 13. We will enact a law with reference to Article 15(5) of the Constitution to provide for reservation in private educational institutions for SC, SENT and OBC. Point 14. We will pass a law authorizing allocation of resources for the scheduled caste sub-plan and tribal sub-plan within the annual budget and monitoring the execution of the plans. Point 15. Congress will end the evil of manual scavenging. Every manual scavenger will be rehabilitated, reskilled, provided a job and assured a life of dignity and safety. The Prohibition of Manual Scavenging Act, 2013, will be strictly implemented, and any person employing anyone for manual scavenging shall be punished. We will provide compensation of 30 lakh to families of sanitation workers, Safai Karmacharis, deceased while at work. We will allocate sufficient funds to enable the procurement of machines that will clean sewers and septic tanks and remove human waste. Free insurance will be provided to all sanitation workers. Point 16. The Scheduled Castes and the Scheduled Tribes, Prevention of Atrocities, Act, 1989, will be enforced diligently. A helpline will be established in every state's capital and legal aid, and paralegal support will be provided to the victims of such atrocities. Point 17. Congress is committed to notify as scheduled area all habitations or groups of habitations where SENT are the largest social group outside the present scheduled areas in all states and union territories. Point 18. A national mission will be set up for effective implementation of the Forest Rights Act, 2006 through a dedicated FRA division, a separate budget and action plans. Point 19. The Congress will ensure settlement of all pending FRA claims within 1 year and establish a process for review of all rejected claims within 6 months. Point 20. Congress is committed to ensure that states enact laws in conformity with the framework of the Central Panchayats, Extension to Scheduled Areas, Act, 1996, PSA, to establish Village Council and Autonomous District Council as envisaged in PSA. Point 21. We will enact the Rohit Vemula Act to address discrimination faced by students belonging to the backward and oppressed communities in educational institutions. Point 22. We will implement the recommendations of the Rank Commission. We will provide free education for children belonging to the nomadic tribes and denotified tribes. Point 23. Congress will establish a diversity commission that will measure, monitor, and promote diversity in public and private employment and education. Equity. Religious and linguistic minorities. All people living in India and all children born in India are equally entitled to enjoy human rights that includes the right to practice one's religion. Linguistic and religious minorities are granted human and civic rights under the Constitution of India. Congress pledges to uphold and protect these rights. Point 1. We will respect and uphold the fundamental right to practice one's faith and the rights guaranteed to religious minorities under Articles 15, 16, 25, 26, 28, 29 and 30 of the Constitution. Point 2. We will also respect and uphold the rights of linguistic minorities guaranteed under Articles 15, 16, 29 and 30 of the Constitution. Point 3. We will encourage and assist students and youth belonging to the minorities to take full advantage of the growing opportunities in education, employment, business, services, sports, arts and other fields. Point 4. We will restore the Maulana Azad scholarships for study abroad and increase the number of scholarships. Point 5. The economic empowerment of minorities is a necessary step for India to realize its full potential. We will ensure that banks will provide institutional credit to minorities without discrimination. Point 6. We will ensure that the minorities receive their fair share of opportunities in education, healthcare, public employment, public works contracts, skill development, sports and cultural activities without discrimination. Point 7. Congress will ensure that, like every citizen, minorities have the freedom of choice of dress, food, language and personal laws. Point 8. We will encourage reform of personal laws. Such reform must be undertaken with the participation and consent of the communities concerned. Point 9. Congress promises to meet long-standing demands for inclusion of more languages in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. Equity, senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and LGBTQA+. Point 1. The central government's contribution to pension for senior citizens, widows and persons with disabilities under the National Social Assistance Program remains a pitiful 200 to 500 per month. Congress will raise this amount to 1,000 per month. Point 2. We will take measures to ensure easy access to legal services for senior citizens, especially in cases of neglect, abuse, abandonment, eviction and financial fraud. Point 3. Congress will review the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act, 2007. Remove the deficiencies and enforce the Act. Point 4. We will restore travel concessions in public transport, rail and road for senior citizens. Point 5. We will expand Articles 15 and 16 of the Constitution to prohibit discrimination on the ground of disability, impairment or sexual orientation. Point 6. We will recognize the Braille script and sign language as languages. Point 7. We will establish a National Center of Research and Excellence for Special Education to ensure that quality education is imparted to children with special needs and children with disabilities. Point 8. As was done in Chhattisgarh, Congress will provide representation for persons with disabilities in local government bodies. Point 9. We will strictly enforce the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, 2016. Point 10. We will implement a scheme to establish assisted living facilities and care centers for the disabled in public-private partnership throughout the country. Point 11. After wide consultation, Congress will bring a law to recognize civil unions between couples belonging to the LGBTQA+ community. Equity, health, Congress was the first political party to acknowledge that health of the people and healthcare are the responsibility of the government. Congress introduced the first healthcare scheme in India and firmly believes that all citizens have the right to health. Point 1. We promise that healthcare will be universal and free in public health centers such as hospitals, clinics, primary health centers, mobile healthcare units, dispensaries and health camps. Free healthcare will include examination, diagnostics, treatment, surgery, medicines, rehabilitation and palliative care. Point 2. The Rajasthan model of cashless insurance up to 25 lakhs will be adopted for universal healthcare. Point 3. Primary health centers will be upgraded according to Indian Public Health Standards norms, and diagnostics will be added in each PHC. Point 4. We will encourage the introduction of health insurance schemes in the private sector and public sector. The current universal healthcare program will be redesigned for different sections of the people and will allow enlistment of private hospitals, non-profit health facilities, and health centers under the schemes. Point 5. Maternity benefits will be available to all women. All employers shall mandatorily grant paid maternity leave for their employees. Point 6. Budget allocation for health will be increased step by step every year to achieve 4% of total expenditure by 2028-29. Point 7. Congress will double the hardship allowance of doctors serving in rural areas and provide suitable residence facilities. Point 8. The contribution of the central government to the pay of frontline health workers, such as Asha, Anganwadi, midday meal cooks, etc., will be doubled. Point 9. We will establish one government medical college cum hospital in each district. Point 10. All vacancies in medical and paramedical posts in public health institutions and all vacancies in medical colleges will be filled in 3 years. Point 11. No hospital or medical college shall be permitted to be opened or allowed to function unless 75% of the medical, paramedical and teaching posts are filled. Point 12. The National Medical Commission Act shall be reviewed and the anomalies and deficiencies removed. NMC shall enjoy full autonomy to carry out the obligations under the Act. Point 13. A second Asha will be appointed in villages with a population of over 2,500. Point 14. All systems of medicine will be supported by the government. Point 15. All manufacturers of medicines will be under strict scrutiny for maintaining quality and following good manufacturing practices. Point 16. The number of central government dispensaries will be rapidly expanded. All central government dispensaries will dispense brand and generic medicines of good quality at reasonable prices. Point 17. A national mission on immunization will be taken up. Only 76% of Indian children receive full immunization. Congress will ensure full immunization of 100% of children within 5 years. Point 18. Nutritional deficiency among children will be addressed to rapidly reduce the incidence of stunting and wasting. We will expand the midday meal scheme up to class 12. Point 19. Congress will pass a law making it an offence to commit acts of violence against doctors and other health professionals while performing their duties. to youth. Jobs. Point 1. Congress guarantees a new Right to Apprenticeship Act to provide a 1-year apprenticeship with a private or a public sector company to every diploma holder or college graduate below the age of 25. Apprentices will get 1 lakh a year. The apprenticeship will impart skills, enhance employability, and provide full-time job opportunities for millions of youth. Point 2. We will provide fast-track courts to adjudicate cases of leaking question papers for job examinations and provide monetary compensation to the victims. Point 3. We will fill the nearly 30 lakh vacancies in sanctioned posts at various levels in the central government. We will stipulate that vacancies in the panchayats and municipal bodies shall be filled according to a timetable agreed with state governments. Point 4. Congress will restructure the Fund of Funds scheme for startups and allocate 50% of the available fund as far as possible equally among all districts for providing funds to youth below 40 years of age to start their businesses and generate employment. Point 5. Government will give a one-time relief to applicants who were unable to write the qualifying public examinations during 1st April 2020 to 30th June 2021 due to the pandemic. Point 6. We will abolish application fees for government examinations and government posts. Point 7. Due to widespread unemployment, as a one-time measure of relief, the amount due, including unpaid interest as on 15th March 2024 in respect of all student educational loans, will be written off and the banks will be compensated by the government. Point 8. Congress will provide sports scholarships of 10,000 per month for talented and budding sportspersons below the age of 21. To youth. Education. Education is a public good and every student has the right to free, quality education provided by the state. Schools, colleges and universities should be predominantly public institutions funded by public resources. We recognize that private educational institutions play an important supplementary role. Point 1. Congress brought in the Right to Education (RTE) Act in 2009 that transformed education for children between the ages of 6 and 14. We will amend the Right to Education Act to make education from Class I to Class 12 in public schools compulsory and free. Point 2. The new education policy, NEP, announced by the BJP NDA government has been opposed by educationists and several state governments. Education is a concurrent subject, and the rights of states to formulate an education policy must be respected. Hence, we will revisit and amend the NEP in consultation with the state governments. Point 3. We will end the practice of charging special fees for different purposes in public schools. Point 4. For greater equity, affordability and transparency in school fees charged by private school, we will encourage state governments to establish fee regulation committees. Point 5. The quality of teaching is the most important determinant of educational outcomes. Congress will work with states to ensure that every class and every subject has a dedicated teacher. Each class must have a dedicated classroom. Point 6. Foundational learning emphasizing literacy, numeracy, foundational science, and constitutional values in schools is an important requirement for all children. Congress will expand the budget for and scale up government programs for foundational learning. Point 7. School and college syllabuses will emphasize the study of STEM subjects in order to develop a scientific temper. Point 8. We will discourage the use of teachers for non-teaching activities. Point 9. We will discourage the appointment of contractual teachers in regular vacancies and ensure that such appointments are regularized. Point 10. We will accelerate the integration of pre-primary and primary education to ensure that all children receive at least 2 years of preschool education. Point 11. Annual surveys have revealed the huge gaps in learning outcomes in school education. We shall take urgent measures to address these deficiencies and ensure wholesome learning outcomes within a period of 5 years. Point 12. Congress will increase the number of Kendriya Vidyalayas, Navodaya Vidyalayas and Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas in consultation with the state governments. Point 13. We will restore the autonomy of colleges and universities. Higher educational institutions will have academic freedom and will be encouraged to experiment, innovate and promote research. We will protect and preserve students' freedom of speech and expression and the right to have elected student unions. Point 14. To reduce dropout rates, we will ensure that pre-matric and higher education scholarships for disadvantaged groups including SC, CENT, OBC, EWS, denotified tribes and minorities are restored, increased and fully funded. Point 15. We will ensure that all central textbooks promote a scientific temper and are aligned with India's constitutional values as contained in the preamble and other provisions of the Constitution of India. Textbook revisions will not be done arbitrarily or driven by political motives. Point 16. We will assist state governments to establish one government community college in every Tehsil Taluk for students completing class 12. These community colleges will offer a broad range of degrees, diplomas suitable for jobs in the service industry, e.g. hospitality, tourism, digital marketing, paramedical, paralegal, etc. and for jobs in the manufacturing industry that require basic technical skills. Point 17. Congress will revive the education loan program to college students implemented under the UPA government and instruct banks to extend collateral-free education loans up to 7.5 lakhs, especially to students belonging to the SC, CENT, OBC, EWS and minorities. Point 18. Due to widespread unemployment, as a one-time measure of relief, the amount due including unpaid interest as on 15th March 2024 in respect of all student educational loans will be written off and the banks will be compensated by the government. Point 19. Congress will ensure that serving teachers are represented in the governing bodies of colleges and universities. Point 20. We will fill all teaching and non-teaching vacancies in central universities and other central educational institutions. Point 21. National accreditation bodies will be strengthened and higher educational institutions will be accredited based on stringent quality norms. Point 22. Online courses and digital learning have gained importance. We will ensure that all students of classes 9 to 12 have mobile phones to ensure equitable access to learning. We will provide free and unlimited internet on college and school campuses to increase accessibility and connectivity. Point 23. We will ensure that all coaching centers and edtech companies meet quality standards. Point 24. We will ensure that all higher educational institutions, central, state and private, meet the prescribed standards for admitting students. We will revisit the policy of centrally conducted qualifying examinations, such as NEET, QET, etc., and make it optional for state governments to adopt these examinations for admissions or conduct their own examinations meeting the prescribed standards to state-funded and state-approved higher educational institutions. Point 25. We will assist state governments to establish state-of-the-art internet-enabled public libraries in state, district and taluk headquarters. To youth. Sports. No government in India's independent history has politicized sports as much as the present BJP NDA government. Congress believes that Indian sport will soar only when the autonomy of sports bodies is restored, political bias is removed, and the government is a strong and neutral supporting force for sports development. Point 1. Congress will take suitable measures to ensure that the constitution of each sports body is in accordance with certain norms and principles, that elections are held according to the constitution of that body and the recommendations of the Justice Lodha Committee, and that there is adequate representation in each sports body for active players, former players and women. Point 2. Congress will enact a separate legislation for the registration of sports federations, bodies, associations, which will ensure full compliance with the Olympic Charter, allow for autonomy and full accountability, and provide recourse for members and sportspersons against discrimination, bias, sexual harassment, abuse, wrongful termination, etc. Point 3. Congress will provide sports scholarships of 10,000 per month to talented and budding sportspersons below the age of 21. Point 4. Congress will ensure that there is at least one community sports center in every block and municipal town and at least one multi-sport coaching center in every district. Point 5. We will establish a National Sports Science Institute to promote research and development in sports sciences and training. Point 6. In order to encourage talented youth to pursue sports as a profession without fear of their future, Congress will introduce a Sporting Heroes Job Guarantee program to assure every sportsperson who has represented India at the international level or the national level a good quality job after the end of the sportsperson's sporting career. Point 7. We will allocate sufficient funds to promote sports among girls and women, persons with disabilities, and disadvantaged groups such as Cent. Three women. Mahalakshmi. Inequality of income and opportunity remains India's ugliest truth. It is the moral and political responsibility of any government to ensure that every Indian family is assured of a basic income every month. Point 1. Congress resolves to launch a Mahalakshmi scheme to provide 1 lakh per year to every poor Indian family as an unconditional cash transfer. The poor will be identified among the families in the bottom of the income pyramid. Point 2. The amount will be directly transferred to the bank account of the oldest woman of house. Absent a woman, it will be transferred to the account of the oldest member of the family. Point 3. The scheme will be rolled out in stages and reviewed every year to assess the number of beneficiary families and its impact on alleviating poverty. 3. Women's empowerment. Point 1. The Constitution, 106th Amendment Act marks the BJP's great betrayal of women. The Amendment Act contains sinister provisions that will allow the reservation of seats in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies to come into operation only beyond 2029. Congress will delete the sinister provisions and bring the Amendment Act into force immediately. The one-third reservation for women will be applied to state assemblies that will be elected in the next round of assembly elections in 2025. The one-third reservation for women will be applied to the Lok Sabha that will be elected in 2029. Point 2. We will reserve 50% of central government jobs for women starting in 2025. Point 3. We will ensure that more women are appointed to high positions such as judges, secretaries to government, high-ranking police officers, law officers, and directors on the boards of listed companies. Point 4. All laws will be scrutinized for gender discrimination and gender bias. The offending provisions will be removed or amended in the first year of the Congress government. Point 5. We will ensure that the principle of same work, same wages is enforced in order to prevent discrimination in wages for women. Point 6. The contribution of the central government to the pay of frontline health workers, such as Asha, Anganwadi, midday meal cooks, etc., will be doubled. Point 7. We will substantially increase the amount of institutional credit that is extended to women. In particular, we will vastly enhance the credit extended to self-help groups by banks, non-banking financial companies and microfinance institutions. Point 8. The labor force participation rate of women is an abysmal 25%. We will embark on massive exercise to expand women's participation in the workforce through measures such as fair and equal wages, safe places of work, child care services, preventing sexual harassment and violence, and extending maternity benefits. Point 9. We will reincorporate the Bharatiya Mahila Bank, Women's Bank, that had made a promising start under an all-women board of directors but was wound up by the patriarchal BJP NDA government. Point 10. In matters of marriage, succession, inheritance, adoption, guardianship, etc., women and men should have equal rights. We will review all the laws and ensure equality between men and women. Point 11. We will ensure that laws intended to prevent offences against women, such as the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013, and the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 are strictly enforced. Point 12. The government will fund state governments to build sufficient night shelters for migrant women workers and adequate number of safe and hygienic public toilets for women will be provided in homes and cities. Free napkin vending machines will be installed in public spaces, schools and colleges. Point 13. In partnership with the state governments, the central government will double the number of working women hostels in the country, with at least one Savitribai Phule hostel in each district. Point 14. We will appoint an Adhikar Mithri in every panchayats to serve as a paralegal to educate women and assist them in the enforcement of their legal rights. 4 farmers. Agriculture. Congress is the only party that has lent its ear to the distress call of the farmers and farm labor. And we are determined to do everything possible to alleviate their pain and make agriculture a desirable livelihood. Point 1. Congress will give a legal guarantee to the minimum support prices (MSP) announced by the government every year as recommended by the Swaminathan Commission. Point 2. The Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices (CAC) will be made a statutory body. Point 3. MSP payable to the farmer seller at the procurement centers and APMCs will be directly credited digitally to the bank account of the farmer. Point 4. We will appoint a permanent commission on agricultural finance that will report periodically on the extent of agricultural credit and the need for loan forbearance. Point 5. Crop insurance will be made farm and farmer specific. Premium will be charged from the farmer according to the sum insured. And all claims will be settled within 30 days. Point 6. In consultation with farmers' organizations, we will make available to farmers 3 avenues for sale of agricultural produce. Point 6a. Regulated market under the prevailing APMC Act. Point 6b. E-market that will be operated by an autonomous body with representation of farmers' organizations, farmer producer organizations, FPOs, and individual progressive farmers. Point 6c. Freedom to the farmer to sell agricultural produce at the farm gate or at any other place of choice with an option to upload the sale and purchase agreement on a digital ledger. Point 7. We will establish farmers' retail markets in large villages and small towns to enable the farmers to bring their produce and sell the same to consumers. Point 8. Congress will formulate and implement a sound import-export policy for agricultural commodity, which will give paramount importance to protecting the interests and concerns of farmers. Point 9. We will revive the system of agricultural extension services to disseminate best knowledge and best practices to every agricultural holding. We will increase the number of Krishi Vigyan Kendras and appoint more scientists to each Kendra. Point 10. We will launch a major program to install solar panels connected to tube wells to generate energy. Point 11. Congress will implement a major initiative to promote horticulture, pisciculture and sericulture and encourage farmers to diversify into these activities and increase their income. Point 12. We will double the value of the output in dairying and poultry in 5 years. Point 13. In coordination with state governments, we will ensure that 1 agricultural college and 1 veterinary college is established in every district of the country. Point 14. We will double the funding for R&D in agriculture in 5 years. 4 farmers. Fishing and fishing communities. Point 1. We will restore the subsidy for diesel for seagoing fishing communities. Point 2. We commit to expeditious search for fisherfolk missing at sea. If presumed dead, death certificates will be issued within 3 months. Point 3. We will direct insurance companies to provide insurance cover for seagoing fishing boats. Point 4. Fishing communities will be issued credit cards, like Kisan credit cards, by banks and extended credit. Point 5. Fishing communities will be enumerated in the caste census and given identity cards by the central government. Point 6. Inland fishing and aquaculture will be recognized as agriculture. Point 7. Congress will promote phytosanitary standards and the exports of marine products that meet such standards. Point 8. Fishing harbors will be developed along the coastline for the use of the fishing community. Point 9. We will create cooperative banks for fishing communities. Point 10. Congress will establish mechanisms with neighboring countries to resolve the problems faced by fishing communities to eliminate conflict, arrests, seizure of boats and loss of lives, and to improve livelihood opportunities for our fishing communities. We workers. Point 1. We will introduce reforms in industrial and labor laws to restore the balance between labor and capital to meet our twin goals of full employment and high productivity gains. Point 2. We will address the issues of gender discrimination and gender inequality in workplaces and in accessing economic opportunities. Point 3. We will ensure that the principle of same work, same wages is enforced in order to prevent discrimination in wages for women. Point 4. We will increase the wage under MNREGA to 400 per day. MNREGA funds and workers may also be deployed to build public assets, such as classrooms, libraries and primary health centers. Point 5. We will launch an urban employment program guaranteeing work for the urban poor in reconstruction and renewal of urban infrastructure. Point 6. We will make a law to specify and protect the rights of gig workers and unorganized workers and enhance their social security. Point 7. We will propose laws to regulate the employment of domestic help and migrant workers and ensure their basic legal rights. Point 8. The list of ration card holders will be updated in all states immediately and it will be ensured that all ration card holders, including migrant workers, get their rations regularly. Point 9. We will expand the PDS coverage based on updated population figures pending the census. PDS will include pulses, dal, and cooking oil. Point 10. Sufficient funds will be allocated to PDS, ICDS and the midday meal scheme to fulfill the mandate of the National Food Security Act, 2013. Point 11. We will collaborate with the state governments to open Indira canteens that will offer subsidized meals as has been done in Karnataka and Rajasthan. Point 12. Appoint a second ASHA worker in all villages with a population exceeding 2,500 persons. Point 13. Double the number of Anganwadi workers and create an additional 14 lakh jobs. Point 14. The Congress guarantees a national minimum wage of Rs 400 per day. Six. Defending the Constitution. Saving democracy, removing fear, restoring freedom. India's democracy has been reduced to an empty shell. Every institution, including Parliament, is perceived to have lost its independence and become subservient to the executive government. It is common knowledge that it is the will of one person that prevails in the country. People's trust in democratic institutions will be restored. Point 1. We promise you freedom from fear. Point 2. We promise to restore freedom of speech and expression including full freedom of the media. Point 3. We promise to decriminalize the offense of defamation and provide, by law, a speedy remedy by way of civil damages. Point 4. We promise to end the arbitrary and indiscriminate suspension of the Internet. Point 5. We will review the Telecommunications Act 2023 and remove the provisions that restrict freedom of speech and expression and that violate the right to privacy. Point 6. We promise to review all laws that interfere with the right to privacy and make suitable amendments to various laws to uphold the right to privacy. Point 7. We promise to uphold the people's right to assemble peacefully and to form associations. Point 8. We promise not to interfere with personal choices of food and dress, to love and marry, and to travel and reside in any part of India. All laws and rules that interfere unreasonably with personal freedoms will be repealed. Point 9. We promise that the two houses of Parliament will each meet for 100 days in a year, and the great traditions of Parliament that prevailed in the past will be revived and scrupulously observed. We promise that one day in a week will be devoted to discuss the agenda suggested by the opposition benches in each house. We promise that the presiding officers of the two houses will be required to sever their connection with any political party, remain neutral, and observe the age-old norm that the speaker does not speak. Point 10. We reject the one nation one election idea, and we promise that elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies will be held as and when they are due in accordance with the Constitution and the traditions of a parliamentary democracy. Point 11. We promise to restore the voters' trust in the election process. We will amend the election laws to combine the efficiency of the electronic voting machine (EVM) and the transparency of the ballot paper. Voting will be through the EVM, but the voter will be able to hold and deposit the machine-generated voting slip into the voter verifiable paper audit trail (VVPAT) unit. The electronic vote tally will be matched against the VVPAT slip tally. Point 12. We promise to strengthen the autonomy of the Election Commission of India, the Central Information Commission, the Human Rights Commission, the Office of the Controller, and Auditor General, the Commissions for SC, Cent, Minorities and OBC, and other constitutional bodies. Point 13. We promise to amend the 10th schedule of the Constitution and make defection, leaving the original party on which the MLA or MP was elected, an automatic disqualification of the membership in the Assembly or Parliament. Point 14. We promise to restore the Planning Commission and define its role and responsibilities. That will include formulating medium and long-term perspective plans to meet the needs of the Nav Sankalp economic policy described in Chapter 7. Point 15. We promise to ensure that the police, investigation, and intelligence agencies will function strictly in accordance with law. Point 16. We promise to put an end to the weaponization of laws, arbitrary searches, seizures and attachments, arbitrary and indiscriminate arrests, third-degree methods, prolonged custody, custodial deaths, and bulldozer justice. Point 17. We promise to enact a law on bail that will incorporate the principle that bail is the rule, jail is the exception in all criminal laws. Point 18. We will introduce comprehensive prison reform to transform jails into institutions of rehabilitation, reform and correction. 6. Defending the Constitution, reversing the damage We promise that all anti-people laws passed by the BJP NDA without proper parliamentary scrutiny and debate, especially those relating to workers, farmers, criminal justice, environment and forests, and digital data protection, will be thoroughly reviewed and changed. We will carry out complete investigations of the electoral bonds scam, the reckless sale of public assets, the PM CARES scam, repeated intelligence failures at the highest levels, and corruption in major defense deals. 6. Defending the Constitution. Media. Point 1. Congress has always believed that self-regulation is the best way to correct the misuse of the media. Congress will amend the Press Council of India Act, 1978 to strengthen the system of self-regulation, protect journalistic freedoms, uphold editorial independence and guard against government interference. Point 2. Congress will amend the Press Council of India Act, 1978 to empower the Council to deal with the menace of fake news and paid news. Point 3. Congress will defend independent journalism by enacting laws to protect journalists from coercive action by the state. This includes restricting the powers of the government for surveillance of journalists, seizure of their devices, and exposure of their sources. Point 4. Congress will pass a law to curb monopolies in the media, cross-ownership of different segments of the media, and control of the media by business organizations. Congress will refer cases of suspected monopolies to the Competition Commission of India. Point 5. All media houses, irrespective of the size, will be required to disclose their ownership structures, direct and indirect, cross-holdings, revenue streams, etc. through their websites. Point 6. Congress will pass a law to preserve the freedom of the Internet and to prevent arbitrary and frequent shutdowns of the Internet. Point 7. Many new laws, e.g. the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill 2023, Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, Press and Registration of Periodicals Act 2023, give unbridled powers of censorship to the government. The first named bill will be withdrawn. Restrictive provisions of the two acts will be amended or deleted to eliminate backdoor censorship. Point 8. Congress will amend the Cinematograph Act, 1952 to provide that the Central Board of Film Certification grants graded certificates to, according to transparent and reasonable criteria. 6. Defending the Constitution. Judiciary. Point 1. The independence and quality of the judiciary is reflected in the independence and quality of the judges. Congress will unswervingly uphold the independence of the judiciary in consultation with the Supreme Court and the Chief Justices of the High Courts. Congress will establish a National Judicial Commission (NJC). The composition of the NJC will be decided in consultation with the Supreme Court. The NJC will be responsible for the selection and appointment of judges of the High Courts and the Supreme Court. Point 2. All vacancies in the High Courts and Supreme Court will be filled within 3 years. Point 3. Congress will amend the Constitution to create 2 divisions in the Supreme Court, a Constitutional Court and a Court of Appeal. The Constitutional Court, consisting of the 7 senior most judges, will hear and decide cases involving the interpretation of the Constitution and other cases of legal significance or national importance. The Court of Appeal will be the final court of appeal that will, sitting in benches of 3 judges each, hear appeals from the High Court and national tribunals. Point 4. We will allocate sufficient funds for augmenting the physical and technical infrastructure of the judiciary and for the modernization and maintenance of the infrastructure. Point 5. More women and persons belonging to the SC, Cent, OBC and minorities will be appointed as judges of the High Courts and the Supreme Court. Point 6. Congress will establish a Judicial Complaints Commission consisting of retired judges of the Supreme Court and retired Chief Justices of the High Courts to investigate complaints of misconduct against judges of the higher judiciary. 6. Defending the Constitution. Anti-corruption. In the last 10 years, we have seen that several measures taken by the BJP NDA government were actually a cloak for corruption. Some examples are demonetization, the Rafale deal, Pegasus spyware, and the electoral bonds scheme. Congress will probe these dubious deals and schemes and bring to law those who made illegal gains through these measures. Known offenders were allowed to leave the country in the last 10 years. The BJP NDA government is perceived to have facilitated their leaving the country and has not been able to bring back any of the scamsters. The circumstances under which they were allowed to leave the country will be probed, and all scamsters and their accomplices will be brought before the law. The BJP has turned out to be a giant washing machine. Accused in registered cases who joined the BJP were allowed to escape the law. The allegations against such persons will be revived and investigated. 6. Defending the Constitution. Art, culture and heritage. Point 1. Congress will guarantee artistic freedom. We will oppose censorship. Attempts by vigilant groups to censor or intimidate artists will be dealt with firmly and according to law. Point 2. Congress will commit resources and attention to sustaining India's living traditions, especially to the flourishing of our distinct indigenous cultures. Point 3. We will empower the artisan economy and promote crafts-based enterprises. Point 4. Congress will ensure the autonomy of national cultural institutions, including financial autonomy. These institutions will be administered by renowned artists and experts in the field. Point 5. We will promote art education in schools and colleges and support institutions that exclusively teach the arts. Point 6. We will intensify the efforts to retrieve India's stolen art and also support private efforts. Point 7. Congress will support government and private efforts to establish museums, art galleries, libraries and archives. This will include smaller institutions at the district level, which are the repositories of local knowledge about artists, artisans, folk culture and communities. We will support measures to create digital archives. Point 8. We will work with state governments to build a national network of libraries. We will support mobile and community libraries. Point 9. We will ensure that the National Mission on Monuments and Antiquities is revitalized. The Archaeological Survey of India will be provided more funds and human resources. Point 10. We will offer grants for the translation of traditional and contemporary expressions of Indian culture into Indian and foreign languages to foster national integration and Indian soft power abroad. Point 11. We will review and strengthen the Copyright Act, 1957. Seven. Economy. Our economic policy. Economic justice is as important as political and social justice. Sound economic policies will ensure that India, a developing country, will attain the status of first, a middle-income country and then, a developed country. We reject jobless growth and the BJP's legacy of job loss growth. We will address the issues of inflation, extreme poverty among a significant section of the people, hunger, nutritional deficiency among women and children, and the growing inequalities of income and wealth. The three goals of our economic policy were and will be work, wealth and welfare. Work. Work means there will be plenty of jobs and sufficient opportunities for self-employment and starting businesses. We will create thousands of jobs as outlined in the next chapter. The best creator of jobs is the private sector. In particular, the MSME sector is the creator of the largest number of jobs, especially for workers with average education and average skills. Wealth. Wealth and wealth creation are the goals of any business. The Congress is committed to rapid growth and generation of wealth. We have set a target of doubling the GDP in the next 10 years. Welfare. Welfare of all is the goal of all work and the creation of wealth. We have made specific promises in different sections of this manifesto. By implementing these promises, we hope to achieve the paramount goal of ushering in a fair, just and equitable economy that will make India a rich country, and that will be resilient to adapt to a changing world. 7. Economy. Unemployment meeting the cry for jobs. Point 1. Fill the nearly 30 lakh vacancies in sanctioned posts at various levels in the central government, teaching and non-teaching posts in central educational institutions, posts of doctors, nurses, paramedics and other supporting staff in central government medical institutions, and vacancies in the Central Armed Police Forces, CAF. Point 2. Publish a job calendar for each department, institution, and public body with details of vacancies and the timelines to fill the vacancies. Point 3. Abolish the Agnipath program and direct the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force and Coast Guard to resume normal recruitment to achieve the full sanctioned strength. Point 4. Appoint a second ASHA worker in all villages with a population exceeding 2,500 persons. Point 5. Double the number of Anganwadi workers and create an additional 14 lakh jobs. Point 6. Create a new employment-linked incentive, ELI, scheme for corporates to win tax credits for additional hiring against regular, quality jobs. Point 7. Launch a strategic mining program to explore and mine rare earths and critical minerals with the object of increasing the share of mining to 5% of GDP and creating 1.5 crore jobs for unskilled and skilled workers in the mineral-rich states. The program will be implemented consistent with stringent environmental and labor safety standards. Point 8. We will launch an urban employment program guaranteeing work for the urban poor in reconstruction and renewal of urban infrastructure. Point 9. Provide jobs for low education, low-skilled youth by launching a water bodies restoration program and a wasteland regeneration program that will be implemented through village panchayats and municipalities. Point 10. Establish an autonomous non-profit society involving the state governments, universities, and business organizations to establish at least one skills training institute in each district to impart skills through short and long-term courses to youth in the age group of 18 to 29 years. Incentivize corporates to use CSR funds for skill training in recognized skill training institutes. Point 11. Incentivize panchayats to establish and maintain solar grids that will generate power for common purposes and create jobs at the panchayats level. Point 12. Amend the laws to make workplaces safer for women workers and with facilities for care of small children. Facilitate travel to such workplaces. 7. Economy, taxation and tax reforms. Point 1. Congress will enact a direct taxes code that will usher in an era of transparency, equity, clarity and impartial tax administration of direct taxes. Point 2. Congress will maintain stable personal income tax rates throughout its term. This will ensure that the salaried class is not subjected to rising tax rates and have clarity to plan their finances over the medium to long period. Point 3. We will eliminate angel tax and all other exploitative tax schemes that inhibit investment in new micro, small companies and innovative startups. Point 4. Congress will lessen the burden of tax on MSMEs owned by individuals and partnership firms. Point 5. We will end the duplicitous cess Raj of the Modi government to deny states their rightful share of tax revenues by introducing a law to limit union cess and surcharges to 5% of gross tax revenues. Point 6. Congress will replace the GST laws enacted by the BJP NDA government with GST 2.0. The new GST regime will be based on the universally accepted principle that GST shall be a single, moderate rate with a few exceptions that will not burden the poor. Point 7. GST will not be levied on agricultural inputs. Point 8. The GST Council will be redesigned. It will be the final authority on policy and on all matters relating to GST. Point 9. The administration of GST laws will be divided horizontally between the central government and the state governments. Small GST payers below a threshold will come under the purview of the state governments. Point 10. A portion of GST revenues will be allocated to panchayats and municipalities. Point 11. Shopkeepers and small retail businesses that face intense competition from online businesses will be given significant tax relief. Point 12. The Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, ITAT, the Goods and Services Tax Appellate Tribunal, and the Customs Appellate Tribunal, CESTAT, will be autonomous judicial bodies without interference by the government. 7. Economy, industry. Point 1. Congress resolves to make India a manufacturing hub by raising the share of manufacturing from 14% to 20% of GDP in the next 5 years. Point 2. The most immediate objective will be to restore a healthy, fearless, and a trustworthy climate for businesses. While a Congress government in 1991 abolished industrial licensing and controls, the independent regulatory regime that was put in place has deteriorated into a system of overt and covert controls. We will conduct a comprehensive review of the current rules and regulations and repeal or amend them in order to restore freedom to industry, business and trade. Point 3. Congress will aim for India attaining a position of leadership in multiple industries, such as steel, metals, garments and textiles, cement, automobiles, electronic goods, pharmaceuticals, engineering goods, petroleum products, chemicals, and mining rare earths and critical minerals. Point 4. According to the RBI, nearly 60% of the large central government projects have been stalled or delayed and costs have risen by nearly 5 lakh crores. Congress will address the problem in a mission mode and find ways and means to revive the stalled projects with the help of the private sector. Point 5. Congress will reform the production-linked incentive scheme to target specific sectors that can create thousands of jobs by making India one of the top 5 producers in the world in that sector. Point 6. We will introduce a new employment-linked incentive, ELI, scheme for corporates to win tax credits for additional hiring against regular, quality jobs. Point 7. We will give the highest priority to intellectual property rights and to the registration, acquisition, protection and use of IPR in small, medium and large businesses. Point 8. Congress will create a level playing field for all businesses. We are opposed to monopolies and oligopolies. We will strengthen the Competition Commission of India in order to ensure that India will be an open and competitive economy. Point 9. Congress will simplify the corporate taxation structure and end tax terrorism. We will restrain the investigating agencies from misusing their powers to revolt or punish corporates and ensure that they act within the strict limits of the law. Point 10. We will encourage and support the use of artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., which will create new and frontline jobs. At the same time, we will ensure that there are more job opportunities in sectors that use conventional technology. 7. Economy. Infrastructure. Point 1. Congress will mobilize public and private capital, increase the pace of construction, and augment infrastructure. The focus will be on design, quality, speed of implementation, maintenance and accountability. Point 2. Private capital must be attracted to create public assets and infrastructure. The BJP NDA government has inverted this model and is using public money to create assets that eventually find their way into private hands. Congress will stop this loot of public money. Point 3. We will modernize the outdated railway infrastructure, but in doing so we will ensure that trains and stations serve the needs of the common people and commuters. The railway services and facilities available to the poor and middle classes will be continued. Point 4. Kavach, an anti-collision device, was developed during the term of the UPA. Kavach will be installed in all train engines and routes to improve passenger safety on Indian Railway. Point 5. Transport facilities and connectivity between rural areas and the nearby town city will be augmented so that people may live and work in rural areas. Point 6. Congress will implement a comprehensive plan for multimodal urban public transport. Point 7. Road tolls are perceived by the road users as excessive and exploitative. The policy on road tolls will be reviewed and formulae will be applied to determine the toll amount and the period of levy for each stretch of the road. Point 8. A regulatory regime for ports and airports will be established to promote efficiency and competition among ports airports. Point 9. We will promote green energy. We will implement renewable energy schemes that will make the panchayats or municipality self-sufficient in electricity as far as possible. We will promote solar-powered engines for tapping groundwater for agriculture. Point 10. We will ensure that modern scientific methods for exploration and extraction of natural resources are followed to protect and preserve the local environment and communities. Representatives from the concerned panchayat or municipality will be consulted before undertaking such projects. Eight. Federalism. Center-state relations. Point 1. Congress will enhance financial assistance to the autonomous district councils in the northeastern states. Point 2. We will immediately restore full statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. We will amend the 6th schedule of the Constitution to include the tribal areas of Ladakh. Point 3. We will give special category status to Andhra Pradesh as promised on 20th February 2014. Point 4. We will amend the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act 1991 and declare that the Lieutenant Governor shall act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers of NCT, Delhi on all matters, including services, except on matters concerning the 3 reserved subjects. Point 6. We will grant full statehood to Puducherry. 8. Federalism. Rural and urban development. Some issues like livelihoods, housing, water, electricity, habitat, pollution, climate change, transport and disaster management are common to both rural and urban areas. Point 1. For rural areas, Congress will pass the Right to Homestead Act, extend the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana to all villages and habitations, and increase the funds to and quicken the pace of implementation of the National Drinking Water Mission. Point 2. We will increase the wage under Magnrega to 400 per day. Magnrega funds and workers may also be deployed to build public assets such as classrooms, libraries and primary health centers. Point 3. We will launch an urban employment program guaranteeing work for the urban poor in reconstruction and renewal of urban infrastructure. Point 4. To regulate the mindless expansion of existing cities, Congress will support the construction of a twin city near an existing city, but separated by a clear green and no construction zone between the old and new cities. Point 5. To improve urban governance, the mayor chairperson will be directly elected for a fixed term of 5 years along with a council. Executive, financial and administrative powers will be conferred upon the mayor chairperson. The administration will be accountable to the mayor chairperson and the council. Point 6. Transport facilities and connectivity between rural areas and the nearby town city will be augmented so that people may live in rural areas and work in urban areas. Point 7. Congress will implement a comprehensive plan for multimodal urban public transport. Point 8. Travel transport will be made safer for women and children, especially in towns and cities. Point 9. The menace of stray dogs has acquired alarming proportions. Solutions will be found that will protect humans, especially children, and that are consistent with a humanitarian approach to animals. Point 10. We will prevail upon the states to implement the 73rd and 74th Amendment to the Constitution in letter and spirit and ensure that funds, functions and functionaries are devolved upon the panchayats and municipalities. 8. Federalism. Northeastern states. Point 1. We will assess the infrastructure deficit in the northeastern states and provide more funds for building infrastructure. Point 2. We will support border trade and make every effort to increase the volume and value of such trade. Point 3. Congress will revive the autonomous district councils, ADCs, in the northeastern states and make them an effective instrument of local government. We will ensure that more funds are channelized through the ADCs for developmental works. Point 4. We will ensure that the garden workers receive fair wages and other benefits in accordance with the applicable laws and agreements. Point 5. The situation in Manipur has gone from bad to worse due to the callous neglect of the BJP NDA government. Congress will remove the present state government forthwith and heal the wounds between the community. We will appoint a reconciliation commission to bring about a political and administrative settlement that will be satisfactory to all the people of the state. Point 6. We will ensure appropriate compensation and redress for the victims and survivors of the conflict in Manipur. Point 7. A final solution and agreement will be entered into with the Naga groups on the basis of the preliminary agreement that had been agreed in 2013-14. Nine. National security. Defense. The Chinese intrusions in Ladakh and the Galwan clash in 2020 represented the biggest setbacks to Indian national security in decades. On 19 June 2020, PM Narendra Modi gave a clean chit to China that considerably weakened our negotiating position. Despite 21 rounds of military-level talks, Chinese troops continue to occupy Indian territory and deny Indian forces access to 26 out of 65 patrolling points, equivalent to an area of 2,000 square kilometers in eastern Ladakh. A Chinese build-up in Doklam threatens the Siliguri corridor that connects northeast India with the rest of the country. Point 1. The absence of a formal national security strategy has led to ad hoc and personalized policy making. After detailed deliberations, Congress will issue a comprehensive national security strategy. Point 2. The Raksha Mantri's operational directive determines the armed forces war planning. The UPA government issued the last directive in 2009. Congress will bring a new operational directive to deal with our current two-front challenge. Point 3. The Chief of Defence Staff, CDS, is a sensitive and crucial post for military reform, preparedness and joint operations. Congress will institutionalize the process of appointing the CDS to ensure transparency and military consensus. Point 4. We will reverse the decline in defense expenditure as a proportion of total expenditure and will ensure that sufficient funds are allocated and spent to meet the requirements of the armed forces. Point 5. Congress will scrap the Agnipath scheme and return to the normal recruitment processes followed by the Army, Navy and Air Force that will guarantee economic and social security for our soldiers. Point 6. Congress will systematically expand the opportunities for women to serve in combatant and non-combatant roles in the armed forces. Point 7. The National Security Council, NSC, and the Office of National Security Advisor, NSA, will be brought under the oversight of a select committee of Parliament. Point 8. The concept of national security in the 21st century has expanded beyond defense of the territory to include hybrid warfare, data security, cyber security, financial security, communication security and security of trade routes. Congress will evolve suitable policies to address each of these subjects. Point 9. Congress will establish a National Economic Security Board under the NSC. Point 10. We will rapidly expand domestic capacity to manufacture defense and security hardware and equipment. Point 11. One rank, one pension, OROP, will be implemented in accordance with the order of the UPA government dated 26th February 2014. Anomalies that have arisen in the implementation of OROP by the BJP NDA government will be rectified. We will restore the disability pension and make it tax-free. 9. National security. Internal security. Point 1. Congress will put down with a firm hand hate speeches, hate crimes and communal conflicts. According to NCRB data, crimes against women, SC, Cent and minorities have increased. We will identify the perpetrators of such crimes as well as their sponsors and punish them in accordance with law. Point 2. Congress is firmly opposed to extrajudicial illegal measures like mob lynching, police encounter killings and bulldozer justice. We will stop them immediately and punish the perpetrators in accordance with law. Point 3. The unfinished agenda of the 2008 reforms are NatGrid and National Counter-Terrorism Center. Congress will take up the two subjects, complete the work, and operationalize them within 1 year. Point 4. The state police is the first responder to threats to internal security. Congress will work with state governments to build, train and equip the state police forces to maintain law and order and to punish offenders without fear or favor. Point 5. Trafficking and selling of drugs will be put down with a firm hand. Increasingly, ports are used to smuggle drugs. The regulatory and penal provisions will be strengthened and drug smugglers and traffickers and their accomplices will be dealt with sternly in accordance with law. Point 6. The strength of the Central Armed Police Forces, CAF, will be augmented and modernized. Our goal is that 33% of these forces will be made up of women. The service rules will be revised and updated. The forces will be deployed having regard to the needs of training, rest and recuperation. Point 7. We will fill the vacancies in the CAF and achieve the full sanctioned strength. 9. National security. Foreign policy. Point 1. Congress affirms and will uphold continuity in India's foreign policy. Our approach was profoundly shaped by the freedom movement and developed through the wisdom of visionary leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru. Point 2. There was a consensus on foreign policy since independence. Unfortunately, in many areas, foreign policy under the BJP NDA government has witnessed marked departures from this consensus, notably on the ongoing Gaza conflict. Congress pledges to restore India's global reputation as a voice of peace and moderation in world affairs. Point 3. Congress reaffirms its firm belief in the continued relevance of the established policy of peaceful coexistence, strategic autonomy in thought and action, and increased bilateral engagement in its relations with the countries of the world. Point 4. We will work to strengthen India's role in multilateral institutions, coordinate positions with other countries of the Global South on vital issues, and continue to work for reform and empowerment of international organizations to deal with the major challenges that transcend borders. Point 5. Enhanced foreign trade will be an important element of our foreign policy. And we will make every effort to conclude long-pending trade negotiations with other countries, in the interests of Indian producers and consumers. Point 6. Congress is implacably opposed to terrorism anywhere in the world. We will work with other countries to eliminate terrorist groups, terrorist acts and cross-border terrorism. Point 7. Congress will work to repair India's international image that has been damaged by the present government's intolerance of dissent and suppression of human rights. Point 8. Congress recognizes that national security is not enhanced by chest-thumping or exaggerated claims but by quiet attention to our borders and resolute defense preparedness. We will work to restore the status quo ante on our borders with China, and to ensure that areas where both armies patrolled in the past are again accessible to our soldiers. We will take the necessary steps to adjust our policy towards China until this is achieved. Point 9. Congress will pay greater attention to our immediate neighbors. We will re-establish the primacy of our special relationships with Nepal and Bhutan and strengthen them to our mutual benefit. We will enhance economic and cultural relations between India and Bangladesh, that are the two most populous countries in South Asia. We will work with Sri Lanka to restore political and commercial relations between the two countries, and help Sri Lanka resolve its political issues, especially with the Tamils. We will repair relations with the Maldives and work with Myanmar to protect the political and human rights of the people of Myanmar. Point 10. Engagement with Pakistan depends fundamentally on its willingness and ability to end cross-border terrorism. Point 11. Congress will significantly increase the size of the Indian Foreign Service, open more missions abroad, leverage our economic strengths, and acquire a position of leadership through the country's values and mutually beneficial economic relationships. Point 12. We will revive the position of a Minister of State handling overseas Indians within the External Affairs Ministry to provide this important constituency with a one-stop window to address their concerns. Environment. Environment, climate change and disaster management. Congress will address the issues of environment and climate change with the seriousness they deserve. Point 1. We will constitute an independent environment protection and climate change authority to establish, monitor and enforce environmental standards, and to enforce the national and state climate change plans. Point 2. We will launch a Green New Deal investment program focused on renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure and the creation of green jobs. Point 3. We will strengthen the National Clean Air Program in order to urgently tackle the problem of air pollution. Point 4. Congress will work with state governments to stop the discharge of effluents into the rivers and water bodies of India. Point 5. Congress will appoint a high-level committee to study the issue of landslides in the hill districts, evolve measures to prevent landslides and ensure citizens' safety. Point 6. Congress will protect the coastal zones of the country. The coastal zones will be preserved without affecting the livelihood of fishing communities. Point 7. India experienced the biggest loss of forest cover after Brazil between 2015 and 2020. We will work with state governments to increase the forest cover, redefine forest and forest cover in accordance with modern scientific standards and involve local communities in afforestation. 8. Congress will provide clean cooking fuel at affordable prices to all households of the country. We will ensure that the use of LPG cylinders is increased from the current paltry average number of 3.7 per year among Ujjwala beneficiaries. Point 9. In order to facilitate the funding required for green transition and to achieve the goal of net zero by 2070, we will set up the Green Transition Fund of India together with state governments and private sector. Point 10. We will not limit disaster management to humans and will expand it to include other vulnerable lives, such as wild animals, domestic animals, pets and livestock. Point 11. We will increase the allocation to the National Adaptation Fund and review the guidelines for use of the fund. Point 12. We will transition from the 2008 National Action Plan on Climate Change to a National Climate Resilience Development Mission to ensure that all sectors of development provide protocols for action and measurable targets. Point 13. Conflicts between humans and wildlife have increased. We will intervene and find solutions that are specific to the areas of conflict. X. Environment, water management and sanitation. India has 18% of the world's population but only 4% of water resources. Climate change and an erratic monsoon have added to the water stress felt by farmers, industries, consumers and others. Point 1. Congress will expand the remit of the Ministry of Jal Shakti and bring all water-related activities and departments under one authority. Point 2. We will implement a nationwide plan to provide potable water in all cities, towns and village panchayats. Point 3. Water harvesting will be made mandatory. Desalination plants will be installed in all coastal areas. The use of recycled water will be promoted for non-drinking and industrial purposes. Point 4. Congress will pay special attention to access to water and democratic sharing of water. We will address these issues by focusing on storage in dams and water bodies, replenishing groundwater and creating a large participatory program of water management, involving the state governments, civil society organizations, farmers, panchayats, and gram sabhas and municipalities. Point 5. Our rivers are polluted because of the discharge of effluents into the rivers. Discharge of any kind of effluent into rivers will be prohibited by law. Panchayats and municipalities will be required by law to devise and implement schemes for disposal of effluents and waste. Point 6. Congress will end the evil of manual scavenging. Every manual scavenger will be rehabilitated, reskilled, provided a job, and assured a life of dignity and safety. The Prohibition of Manual Scavenging Act, 2013 will be strictly implemented and any person employing anyone for manual scavenging shall be punished. We will provide compensation of 30 lakh to families of sanitation workers deceased while at work. We will allocate sufficient funds to enable the procurement of machines that will clean sewers and septic tanks and remove human waste. Free insurance will be provided to all sanitation workers. Point 7. In collaboration with state governments, a comprehensive program of underground drainage and safe disposal of sewage will be implemented in all towns and municipalities in 10 years. An appeal. The 10 years of the BJP NDA government have been marked by exaggeration and publicity rather than substance and performance. The economy has registered less than satisfactory growth. Widespread unemployment, high inflation, and falling consumption have debilitated even this modest growth, while the poor and the middle classes have been hit below the belt. The atmosphere in the country has become hate-filled and divisive. Constitutional values have been pushed to the background and majoritarianism has taken over. Inequalities have widened. Every section of the people lives in fear. What India and the Indian people need at this time is a decisive break from the path of the last 10 years. The people yearn to walk on the road of all-round development, equality, equity, freedom and justice. Congress has the capability to provide the leadership to the people to walk on this new road. The lessons of history are there before you. Congress delivered independence. Congress laid the foundations of democracy. Congress stayed the country's economic development through the 1950s and 1960s. Congress governments fought the wars of 1965 and 1971 and protected the sovereignty and integrity of India. Congress brought about a paradigm change in 1991 and ushered in an era of impressive growth. In the last 10 years, the Congress has been the bulwark against illiberalism and authoritarianism. Congress has stood with the people in their fight against injustice and oppressive laws. Bearing in mind the lessons of history, the Congress appeals to you to repose your faith once again in the Indian National Congress. We promise you greater freedom, faster growth, more equitable development, and justice for all. We appeal to you to vote for the hand symbol and for the candidates of the Indian National Congress. It is time to remind ourselves of Tagore's immortal words in Gitanjali, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake.